So Kayode called it the politics of the governance or the governance of the politics. Whichever way you decide to look at it, there is a politics that determines, how much you buy a basket of tomatoes in the market, how much you buy a bag of rice in the market, and we could go on and on. But let's manage our time and look at the strides of the administration in that area in the last 1 year. And who else to help us with this conversation than the National Publicity Secretary of the All Progressives Congress, Mr. Felix Morka. Mr. Felix Morka, good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning to you.
Let's start with this hullabaloo about the national anthem right now. We have exited Arise, O compatriot, to Nigeria we hail thee. First of all, let's start with you. Can you sing the national anthem, by the way, Mr. Morka?
I can try.
Please try. Make an attempt.
Nigeria, we hail thee, our own dear native land. Though tribe and tongue may differ, in brotherhood we stand. Nigerians all are proud to serve our sovereign motherland.
Wow. A round of applause. Fantastic. So because of that, you know what? We're going to leave the argument about whether or not it's the appropriate thing to do. And thank you for doing a good job. Mr. Morka, let's start with the unity of the country, as the case may be, which is an important area to look at. Some say that the body language of the administration, especially the presidency and the president, says a lot, about how fast we're moving towards unifying the country or not. And speaking of which, many have looked at the appointments of the administration, particularly federal appointments, and said, look, there still leaves much to be desired. Are we in the Federal Republic of Southwest Nigeria, or really the Federal Republic of Nigeria, when you consider the names of those heading most agencies? EFCC, NCDC, the Customs Service, the Inspector General of Police. Mr. Morka, how do you weigh in on this?
My apologies, I lost you for a moment. I didn't quite hear everything you asked. So if you don't mind, just quickly recap on that question, because I was frozen up. Yeah.
Okay, I'll try to summarize it. A critical look at federal appointments and how whether or not it reflects federal character, and the reservations expressed by some that it makes the country look more like it's the Federal Republic of Southwest Nigeria rather than the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Well, thank you very much. Look, I think that this president is eminently committed to building the unity of our country, not just in terms of the distribution of roles and responsibilities in terms of appointments, but also in terms of his attentiveness to all of those issues and challenges that often militate against us finding common ground. Now, with respect to your question, I think that, look, I personally, I haven't taken the time to, to run the numbers of the number of appointees from the Southwest versus, the Southeast or for that matter, the North, West or North, Central or the Northeast. I haven't done that. So I'm not sure that I have a clear present sense of any sort of disproportion that your question alludes to. However, I think that these appointments are still ongoing. This government is not done. We have a huge number of still important offices that have yet to be filled, and I'm sure that in time this will balance out. But having said that, let me just remind us that every time a president is inaugurated, usually, we can argue whether or not it's right or wrong. Usually, you tend to have, people come into offices that are from, his particular part of the country. With Jonathan, we saw that. With, Buhari, with, Yar'Adua and Obasanjo, we saw that. But the point is that, I am certain that with time, given that we still have quite a number of outstanding positions are yet to be filled. I'm sure that the balancing act will appear probably more equitable and we have more spread, so to speak.
Well, and she had also mentioned some of the government agencies. She had mentioned the police, customs, and the rest. Some of them like sequenced in such a way that the heads are from South. But you said you've not taken a look at them, but these are the issues that have been raised. But also let's turn our attention to another side of this administration's, will I say, how people are rating this administration. And one of them came from the presidential candidate of the PDP, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar. In fact, in the statement which he put out, he gave the president 6 sort of advice or pointers to how to navigate this leadership position. And I'll just take first one, because he talked about the sequencing of the policies of this government. And for him, said they were not well thought out. And I think that's been a consistent narrative across board. The removal of subsidy, what was meant to come after, how there was meant to be some sort of buffer so that a lot of Nigerians won't feel the impact as much as they are now, because the economic indices, a lot of them are in the red. And this is what he said. He said, first, pause and reflect. It is important that the government understands what reforms must be taken and in what sequence. A framework is needed with clearly stated reform objectives and strategies. I know you've put out a statement to react to that, but would it be too much if the president were to come out and to say, well, Nigerians, yes, we could have done things better in terms of the sequencing of these policies? Is that something that you think the president should come out and first pause and reflect so that you can now carry Nigerians along moving forward?
Yes, I have read the statement by the former vice president and the candidate of the PDP in the last election. I note all of the points he made, but quite frankly, Atiku Abubakar, just like the president, like the other leading candidate, Peter Obi, all promised Nigerians to do the very same thing that this president is doing. Because there is universal consensus that this country cannot sustain all of the distortions and the very false policies that were in play, including the massive hemorrhagic sustainable drain called multiple foreign exchange regimes. Everyone, not just the political leaders, but all us, locally and internationally, agree that these policies needed to be drastically upturned. That's what this president has done. Now, I think that when Atiku speaks about sequencing, he's simply in denial of the courage that this president demonstrated to tackle head-on these, terrible policies that have completely, been the obstacle to our growth and development. Now, what is sequencing? If you take out the fuel subsidy, how long does it take for the economy to self-correct in order for it to be okay to, tackle the question of the multiple foreign exchange? These policies are not, isolated. They are completely related. What happens in one sector, either helps or undermines the other policy. They are completely interdependent. They're not, like something you do one and then wait, 2 years to do the other. Because while you are waiting, the other is, continuing to do damage to the very objectives you're seeking to accomplish. So what I'm saying is that this president is doing exactly what experts agree is right. Now, I hate to refer to the international, financial, economic, monetary, community, who have consistently hailed the efforts of this president and the courage demonstrated. Kayode, I think that we must, realize that this conversation is happening just at the end of the first year of this government. The policies we're discussing are policies that are intended in the long term to radically transform the fundamentals of our economic life. So I think that an assessment whether or not these policies have been effective in the 1 year, I think really does not do justice to the essence of the policies themselves. Any elementary economist will tell you that when you're talking about the regime of fuel subsidy, where Nigeria was committing over $10 billion annually to providing subsidy on petroleum products. That's, for an economy of our size, that's remarkable. That's completely unrealistic. And I think that's why the Buhari government abolished that system legally for Asiwaju to implement as he did in that announcement on the day of his inauguration.
Let me just quickly, I understand, but quickly, Mr. Morka, pardon me. So this is a point. You've talked about people commending the government from outside there, but inside there, which is the primary, which is what really matters. People outside can say what they can, but it's people here, their opinion and their reality that matters. And this line, I'd like you to respond to it in addition to what you were going to say. He said that President Tinubu's policies do not create prosperity. He talked about the inflation, the headline inflation, not to talk of food inflation, which is over 40%. He has talked about different things. So do you agree or disagree that the president's policy do not create prosperity with what we've seen with the poverty level right now?
You see, again, that's very simplistic of the former vice president. Somebody who has held an office as high as the vice president should be somewhat more realistic, except that he's just, speaking out of what I refer to as, crass political envy in my statement. You see, look, what exactly did he expect if he had taken out the fuel subsidy? What we're seeing, some of the, very transient consequences of the policies we're discussing are inevitable, irrespective of the author of their removal. Whether it was Asiwaju who removed it, or Peter Obi who removed it, or Atiku Abubakar who removed it, we will be having this conversation because there's no other way for it to play. To take out subsidy that was significant in lowering the prices and making the prices bearable for our people, there's no way around it. So I think that, he's been very disingenuous to suggest that, what you're speaking to about the headline inflation and, food inflation and some of the other economic, indices that we're seeing that are obviously very tough on our people. And, I agree that it's tough. The president agrees that it's tough. He, repeats it over and over again that these tough circumstances and outcomes, the temporary outcomes of these policies are inevitable. My point is that we should look in the medium to long term to see the fullness of the wisdom and of the benefits of this. You know what? I'd rather, feel that pain today and, feel the gain, sustainably going forward than to allow the country to simply, fall into a point of no return in terms of, chaos and, complete lack of productivity and growth. In the long term, I think that Atiku Abubakar did not say that in the long term, these policies will inure to the benefit and to the gain of Nigerians. He simply was focusing on a very myopic frame of, analysis, which is, the short term, which no other president, even if it was not Asiwaju, would, have any miracle, to, transform and prevent. Having said that, you must also recognize that this president is keenly aware and attentive to what our people are going through, which is why, there's a slew of policies and interventions and programs that are meant to, cushion the, biting impact of this short-term, effects of the policies. All right, that's what we must look at for an assessment, not the self-serving analysis of the article of workers.
All right, Mr. Morka, it's true that we must look at the long-term impact. We hope that that comes true because Nigeria is for all of us. Because the concerns of Nigerians most of the time is the fact that this is not the first time promises are made. We've been at this from our independence till today. And Nigeria my father lived in is different from the Nigeria I live in. I hope that the Nigeria my children will live in will be better in Nigeria. That's a prayer for everybody. But leaderships have not demonstrated that things get better, they get worse. The records are there. I can give you the economic data. I have them. But it's our country. We hope it works better. But let's move on to another part of it, which is that has to do with the performance of the ministers of the president. Do you think it is time for the president to look at the cabinet and do a little bit of a shake-up? Some people are saying some of those ministers are docile. Some are saying some ministers we can't even remember what their names are, not even know what their functions are at the end of the day. And we have perhaps the biggest cabinet in a long while, 48 initially. I think we have about 45 or so now. Do you agree that it is time to shake up the cabinet of the president so that it gets the results that Nigeria are eager to see from him?
Before I answer the question of the performance of the ministers, you made a very important reflection before you segued into your question. As a veteran civil rights and pro-democracy activist, I hear you. I hear you when you say that Nigerians have been treated to a lot of promises that never materialize. But, but hear me, my brother, and anyone who is listening. This president is not making promises that he will not keep. He's making promises that he wakes up every morning, hoping and believing and working hard to justify. Cynicism is a huge part of the problem we have as a country. But it's understandable because, that cynicism was somewhat constructed by, by the historical I think, unfolding of governance in our country. So I can understand why Nigerians remain cynical. But we must also realize that extreme cynicism is also a huge, clear, and present threat to our economic development. Because the government alone cannot do it. The people must, at some level, really allow themselves, even if just naively, to believe that this time things will change, because no government before now has dealt and delved to this level to tackle the problems that were created generationally at the roots of the problem. That's what this government is doing, to really boldface say, look, you know what, enough is enough. We must go to the roots to tackle it. Having said that, look, the government itself did create a performance evaluation system, which I think is also very commendable because it's the first time that we are seeing that, where ministers were obligated to report their performance for evaluation, and ultimately I think assessment of how well they've done. It's the first time we're seeing that. So please, I think we should, allow that process to work. I know that the president is not playing when he said, you will be held accountable for your performance. So any minister who has not performed, who has not, I think, allowed himself or herself to reach, the benchmark of the scorecard that this president has set as the standard, the yardstick for measuring effectiveness, Mr. President, who appointed them, alone has the prerogative to decide on what to do. I will not name names, and I will not, overreach that, framework which this president has very smartly introduced. But I think that Nigerians are entitled to expect that at some point the president will evaluate the performance of his ministers and make, the necessary call that is, disclosed by, I think, that framework of assessment.
Well, Mr. Morka, You say cynicism may be unhealthy, but you also have to take into cognizance the fact that this cynicism has built up over many years of failed promises. And in the last 8 years, apart from this extra one, we've had an APC administration as well. But I wonder, okay, we're totally out of time. It's an inexhaustible conversation, but we'd like to thank you very much for being on the program. We hope to have you yet again, such that we can, expand this conversation and get your views more on the administration's disposition towards so many things that Nigerians are saying. Thank you so much, sir. Mr. Felix Morka
Thank you for having me this morning. Thank you.
He's the National Publicity Secretary of the All Progressives Congress.
And good job on singing the national anthem. Good job.
Thank you, my dear brother. Thank you.
Bukola.
Yes, thank you, sir. So up next, we'll look at the softer side of things as one of your favorite Big Brother housemates joins us to talk about life after the reality show. Join us again.